So, grab your controllers and get ready. This may be the only time I review a game on time. In fact, 6 months early. No, only 4. Coming out in July, I believe. But I can through the magic of owning a Nintendo Wii. So, the game's already been out for years in my world. I played it when it first came out, and caveat, it has been many years since I played this game. I guess it's about 8 since it came out. But I played it pretty hard. I played it end to end, and I thought about it a lot. Partly because I don't love it. But let's talk about this game. So, Skyward Sword, when this game came out, the big features that were sort of pushed for this game were flying on the giant loft-wing bird and sword fighting with motion controls. So Twilight Princess had some shoehorned-in motion controls. Skyward Sword was meant to be the full meal deal motion-controlled Legend of Zelda game. The review score I would give is 7 out of 10. I always start with the score and end with what I think the game's value is, dollars-wise. So 7 out of 10 means I think the game is good. For a Legend of Zelda game, that's kind of bad. So, why do I give the game a 7 out of 10? Let's discuss. I'm going to start with the biggest pros and cons and work my way down to the little stuff. My number one problem with Skyward Sword was just plain out terrible game design. Okay? I've got a little illustration here. So, you see the 3 areas: sky, overworld, dungeons. Okay, the dungeons aren't literally caves in this game. In fact, this is one of the few games with not a lot of caves. But with that 3-part aspect, my number one problem is it's really all totally discrete. So you can't go to the overworld without dropping through a hole up in the sky. The sky is basically a hub. Well, wait a minute. You gave me a bird in an open world game, but I can't even fly it over the world? It's stuck in its little sky. Terrible. Get down to the overworld and things continue to be terrible as you can't even travel between the different sections. It's 3 discrete sections: the forest, the volcanoes, the desert. You can't go between them. You have to go back up to the sky and come down again. So the sky becomes this kind of glorified hub, sort of like the castle in Super Mario 64. Not to say the sky is bad, but like I said, I'm flying a bird in a Legend of Zelda game, the series I view as an open world game, and I can't even fly over the open world. Okay, the sky otherwise is fine, a little dull. But there's different islands to visit. There's the main island with all the NPCs, and most of the story beats take place there. So there's some exploration to do up there, but all the real action is down in the overworld. Okay, get down to the overworld and you've got even more problems. Actually, let me quickly get dungeons out of the way first. The dungeons in this game, there's nothing new or different. They're the same as the 3D Zelda dungeons have been for years, which means maybe too many puzzles in my opinion, but and a whole lot of crazy 3D navigation and a lot of combat. And of course the formula, you're going to find an item in the dungeon that's going to help you get through the dungeon, and it's going to help you beat the boss. It's a little formulaic. I'm not in love with the puzzles, but fine. There's nothing new that went wrong there. In the overworld, besides everything being discrete and you can't go from area to area, they felt the need to make everything into one huge obstacle course. You're constantly climbing, you're running out of energy. It's sort of like Breath of the Wild, but not as good. You're literally going across tight ropes or over narrow bridges. So you're constantly trying to navigate the territory. It almost feels like 3 giant dungeons on top of having dungeons already in the game. I didn't care for that setup. Okay, besides the 3D navigation, there's also quite a bit of puzzling and a lot of scavenger hunting in the overworld. I don't care for those either. There is some sword fighting. We'll get to that in a minute. The other complaint I have about the overworld, you've got these 3 discrete sections, and you're going to visit them basically 9 times, 3 times each. And so it's annoying reuse of the assets, right? Instead of giving me new areas to explore, you're making me go back again and again and again. And it also results in the game feels very video game-like as if you've got 3 levels to explore instead of an open world. And it's also very linear. So the first time you go through, you're going to visit the forest, the volcano, the desert. It'll be the same for absolutely everyone. The second time, it's in a slightly different order, but it's still going to be the same for everyone. Third time, you at least get to choose which one. Even then, you can't come back out and say, no, wait, I changed my mind. I'm going to go finish the desert and then come back to the forest. You're stuck. So the whole game feels very linear. And to that end, that's my second complaint about the game. It is too linear. It's too linear in a lot of ways, and I wanted to go through one quick anecdote about this game. Okay, so playing the game, you're in the desert, and you discover this big dried-out lake bed. It turns out, through the power of time travel, you can actually go back to when there was still a lake there. So you're running around this lake in your little time travel boat. It's cool, and you're thinking, hey, I finally get to do something sort of open world, something, I don't just have to follow the path, the story beats, which the game has been making me follow pretty hard at this point. But it turns out, you want to go visit the pirate island? No, sorry, wait a minute, go check out this other one first. So you've got this huge lake. 4 events roughly, I think, happen on the lake. And you have to do them in order. Again, you're stuck with the story. I don't like the way they did this. So, 2 big problems with the game, both around game design, and linear deserved a little extra talk. Now, on the other hand, the motion controls, I actually really like them. For me, this is almost the perfect sword fighting adventure game that I wanted on Wii its entire lifespan. This is the closest the system comes, even though it never quite gets there. And maybe sometime I should do a video about all the different sword fighting attempts that we had. But so this game comes close. I have heard some people criticize the motion control sword fighting for turning all the fights into puzzles. I'm sympathetic to anyone who finds that Zelda got too puzzle-filled over the years. But I don't find that at all. Yes, you've got to hit enemies at the right angle to avoid their parries and whatnot. That seems like sword fighting to me. Obviously, I'm not a sword fighting expert, but it feels just like it's a part of the sword fighting. There are probably a few bosses where that's true, but overall, I really enjoyed the sword fighting in this game, and I liked how it put it together with a story, which is what was missing in, say, Wii Sports Resort. There is the motion-controlled aiming. That part, I admit, kind of sucks. I got used to it after a while. The bombs, you get to roll them like bowling balls or throw them. That part was fine, but I really like the sword fighting, and I honestly can't imagine the game without it. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end, when I sort of go into, hey, now that the Switch version is coming out, is this the time to look into Skyward Sword? So, I also have to say, this has one of the best soundtracks in the series, maybe the best. It had full orchestration, actually it's not orchestrated all the way through, but it has a lot of tracks with full orchestra. So that's really cool, and it was a big leap up for Zelda at the time, and I enjoyed it. The No Sword Scavenger Hunts, I didn't like them. Basically, there's periods in the game where you go to an area and you get sent into an alternate dimension with no sword, and you have to run around and pick up, say, roughly 20, 25 collectibles. Every time, if you take too long getting from one collectible to the next, it triggers these armored goons who you can't fight back against. If any of them catches you, you're dead, and you have to start from the beginning. It's actually really fun and intense in a sense, but it also really emphasizes my earlier complaints about the overworld being a big obstacle course, and about having to revisit it over and over again, right? There's 3 big visits, and then within one of those visits, you're running around the obstacle course over and over until you successfully capture all the items. Really makes you, it really reminds you, oh yeah, they're making me play this stupid map over and over and over again. I'm tired of it, right? It's not a multiplayer game where the map can change depending on how other people are acting. You're stuck on the same scavenger hunt every time, and there is an optimal way to beat it, absolutely. Okay, 6, I hate Fi. Many people over the years have expressed their hatred for Navi, the fairy from Ocarina of Time. Hey, listen! She's annoying, but I can kind of tune her out. Fi comes out of nowhere and throws a huge block of text at you to read. She gives away secrets before you have any chance to look for them yourself. She talks in this annoying technobabble way. Oh, it's 95.7% likely that you'll do this or that. Worst partner in the series, in my opinion, by the way. So these items didn't have a huge impact on the score, but I thought they were worth mentioning. I like a lot of the story elements. The world in the sky is a cool concept, even if you're stuck in the sky and can't fly over the overworld. The game is kind of the mother of all prequels. It really explains how the usual Link, Zelda, Ganon battle for Hyrule begins. And it's, out of all the Zelda games I've seen, Link and Zelda have never been more romantic. They made Zelda's character very charming. She's always passing smiles on, and Link is definitely into her. The character designs are kind of all over the place, almost like they smushed Twilight Princess and Wind Waker together. You'll see some characters that are semi-realistic comic book anime characters, and then you'll see others that look like total cartoon weirdos. The fortune teller has eyes like this, like he's straight out of Wind Waker. It's weird. And the upgrade system, it was kind of cool. You have shields that can be destroyed, so they might have to be rebuilt. They can also be made better. You have other items that you pick up throughout the game that can actually be upgraded as you go along, and they get new abilities. So that was kind of cool. It made rupees feel relevant for the first time in quite a few Zelda games, actually, like since Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, I'd say. Finally, replay value. So the game took me about 80 hours to beat. I tend to take in all the scenery and talk to all the NPCs, so it's probably more like 65 or so for most people. I can't imagine myself ever doing a full replay of this game. It is too long and too mediocre. But I could see myself jumping in and playing for 10 or 20 hours to experience a bit of the story and do some of that awesome sword fighting again. The challenge level overall is higher than the earlier 3D Zelda games, I'd say, but still nothing like the 2D ones. And not as hard as Breath of the Wild either, if that's your most recent reference point. So the value on this game, usually I give Canadian and US dollar values, but here I'm going to say about $30 to $40. So if you're in Canada, it's probably on the higher end of that scale. If you're in the US, it's lower because of your dollar value. So definitely a big difference from what Nintendo is asking, which is $60. And we'll talk about that next. Back to Nintendo is asking $60 for the HD remake. Basically, everything goes in 60 FPS and it's HD. They haven't really changed the graphics or anything. A lot of people are really mad about it. I'll say, if I look at it through a business lens, because I have owned Nintendo stock before and I like talking about the business of video games, I say good on Nintendo. If they can get a bunch of suckers to pay $60 for Skyward Sword all over again, awesome. As a gamer, yeah, I agree it's a ripoff. Like I just said, I think this game's worth maybe $30 or $40. even if you've never played it before. I suppose if you love puzzles, love obstacle courses, don't mind that it's not really open world, and then maybe it would be worth it. Also, if you love the idea of the motion controls, the new version is going to let you play without motion controls. I'm glad they're letting you do either or. I mean, more options are better. Personally, I don't think the combat system would be very fun without the motion controls. But what do I know? I haven't played it that way before. I thought that the motion controls were one of the things saving the game, as I said earlier, even if the aiming kind of sucked. I wonder if they'll offer the option to use the C-stick for aiming and motion controls. Probably not. That would actually be interesting, though, because the aiming was harsh. The sword fighting was cool. So, Skyward Sword, one of my least favorite Zelda games, but maybe worth checking out if you've never played it before. Wait for a sale, I would say. This is not Breath of the Wild. It is a very different beast with a lot of puzzling, a lot of scavenger hunting, and a lot of obstacle course crawling. And Link doesn't have the freedom to climb over stuff like he does in Breath of the Wild. But you guys can decide for yourselves if you're going to check it out later on. I am sure the price will go down eventually. I'm pretty sure the game's only $20 on the Wii U eShop, which is another reason people are going nuts about the price. Thanks for watching, and maybe you'll catch me again another time.